What's up, fight fans, and welcome to Cage Side Seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house on the most trusted source for news and entertainment in mixed martial arts for almost 2 decades. That's 20 years. MMA Weekly. I'm Jim Gries. Call me Gries, and man, am I pumped to do this interview this week. It's UFC Vegas 14, UFC Fight Night, Felder versus Dos Anjos. Paul Felder stepping up inside of a week's notice to save the main event against the Grizzly veteran, the former champ, and Rafael Dos Anjos, and also stepping up like the G that he is, your boy in the building, Eryk Anders. 3 weeks notice. He was on Fight Island. He was cornering Walt Harris a couple of weeks back, and they said, hey, do you want to fight in Vegas in 3 weeks? And man, he said no problem as he got Harris, the big ticket, ready to take on Volkov, and he is now fighting this weekend against Antônio Arroyo. He's 13-5, 5-5 in the UFC, former LFA champ, former starting outside linebacker with 7 titles in the national championship game against Texas in 2009. The national champ, Eryk Anders, your boy in the building right here on Cage Side Seat. Eryk, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, man.
Man, appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, of course, no doubt. We go way back. I'm good friends with your brother, Michael. We worked together on some competitive fitness events where I was the play-by-play announcer, and he was the judge. I call him Durs, but there's a lot of Durses out there now that I know you and the rest of your family, man. I haven't seen you in person since the red carpet at the World MMA Awards in the summer of 2019. Man, so much has happened back then. You fought 7 times in 2018, 2019, only 1 fight this year, man. Only 1 fight back in May against Jotko, and that's one you want to have back. But it's been a tough year with COVID, some things going on with you medically and personally. Take us through what happened on Fight Island 3 weeks ago where you said, hey, man, give me this fight. How was it offered? What did that all look like, and how did it transpire?
Yeah, you know, I had an injury, needed surgery, got it fixed. So, you know, I was kind of on the shelf for a little bit. And, you know, got cleared, been training. And, yeah, I was on the island with Walt, and they called me. And I was, you know, I already had turned down 1 fight earlier, you know, a few weeks ago, because I thought I had COVID. So I was waiting on my results. And by the time I got my results back, they had already filled the slot. So I, you know, it's kind of, you know, once you almost have a fight, it kind of puts that taste in your mouth and you want to do it again. And then I was on the island and watching everybody go through the emotions and cutting weight and stuff. And, you know, it just made me want to, you know, get back in there sooner than I had originally planned.
Wow, man, yeah, I mean, that's a crazy story, and you think you might have COVID, so let's talk a little bit about that. What's going through your head when you thought you might have had it for a minute there?
Man, I wasn't tripping or nothing, you know, it's just one of those things. You get it, then I was going to have to lay down for a few days, and, you know, that was, you know, everybody, you know, a lot of people who've had it, especially, like, recently, you know, they say it just feels like you know, like a mild cold, you know, like it wasn't even that bad, so, you know, I just wasn't feeling good, so I went and got tested, and they called me, and I was like, man, just wait till tomorrow when I get the results. And then Mike Rodriguez had already filled the slot to fight Ed Herman. So, you know, I missed that opportunity.
Yeah, right, man. I mean, growing up with all those brothers and sisters, football locker room in college, I mean, you've been around everything, bro. COVID be nothing for you. You got to feel like your immune system's pretty good, I'd imagine. No worries there.
Oh, yeah. You know, I feel like I got the immune system of a shark. You know, they don't ever get sick or cancer or anything like that. So, you know, outside of, you know, that when I thought I had COVID, you know, that's really the only time this year when, you know, I've been down and out.
Your boy in the building, Eryk Anders, right here, Cage Side Seat on MMA Weekly. Jim Gries, and the man himself, Eryk Anders. And you know, I want to talk to you more about the year that it's been for you. Only 1 fight. We mentioned 7 in the last 2 years combined against Krzysztof Jotko. Didn't go your way in May, but more important than that for you, you felt like that performance wasn't representative of who you are. Great striker, really good takedowns and takedown defense, brown belt in jiu-jitsu. No one's going to finish you, bro. And so it's one of those things where, you know, you're a guy who is going to dish out a lot of punishment. You're also going to take a lot of punishment. You had the injury, you had the surgery, the whole COVID era. What's the whole process been like getting you ready to get back in the octagon and get ready to get that hand raised again?
Man, you know, I just knew it was a matter of time, and, you know, some things can't be rushed, you know, so, you know, I hated my last fight being a loss and then having to wait so long to get back in there, but at the same time, you know, no doctor was going to clear me, so, you know, it was kind of good in a sense that, kind of forced me to sit down, rest, let my body recover. Didn't train a whole lot. And, sometimes that's necessary to take a break like that, to let your body heal up and, repair mentally and physically.
Did you learn anything about yourself while you were out, or did you learn anything new for your game, any mental edge, anything like that? And a lot of times with athletes, when you're busy all the time and you're training and you're focused and you got the next fight coming up and the next fight and the next fight, it just kind of gets to be in that routine and you're training every day. But when you're on the shelf and when you have time to sit and think and be alone, you can reflect and pick things up. Did you learn anything new about yourself? Did you learn anything new that'll help you with your game as you get back into it and get ready to fight again?
I wouldn't say I learned anything new. Maybe patience, because I'm not, a super patient guy when it comes to things like this. I like to be active. I like to be up, moving around, and training. It's what I do. It's what I love. So, just kind of took more time, hung out with the family a lot more because I had a lot more free time, and it's kind of good actually.
Eryk Anders here, cage side, your boy, and I'm sure Israel and Noah love that, having their dad around, spending some more time with them. But it's interesting, you had a little time to watch football this year too, but COVID's made it a little weird. Your alma mater had some problems with it. Nick Saban had the COVID scare. This week's game against LSU, all kinds of things going on there. So it got me to thinking with this interview with you coming up, Eryk, how do you think you would have handled it as a college football player as opposed to a fighter? Because it's really impacting the student athletes this year as well. And with the fighters, the UFC's kind of just charged right through it, but so many different things you have to do, so many protocols, more things you have to do getting ready for a fight. So how do you think you would have handled it differently as a college football player as opposed to a fighter?
Oh, man, to be honest, I would have dealt with it the exact same way, I think. I really didn't pay COVID any attention. I when it first came out and they were canceling cards, I was supposed to fight in April, and I knew just by the way Dana White was talking at the earliest possibility he was going to have fights. So we kept training all through COVID, even when the gyms were closed. We put the cardboard up in the windows and did all that other stuff and kept training. And the only difference is there'd be a lot more supervision in the NCAA level. I think a lot more people making decisions for you in college. So if the commissioner of the SEC says no football, then there's no football. If the president of the university says you can't practice, then you can't practice. But with MMA, we're all adults, and not a whole lot of people to tell you what you can and can't do. It is what you have to do. So we did what we had to do, and that's what it is.
What's it been like for you training around it with COVID? You've been in Arizona, you've been in Alabama, there's been quarantine, there's been restrictions, there's been people who had it. I know it helped you being on the same schedule as Walt Harris, your teammate, for most of this year, but how much did it affect you, if at all, training around COVID and dealing with all the new, I don't want to say necessarily just restrictions, but protocols and procedures in the world right now?
Yeah, like I said, for me, COVID has been non-existent, haven't worried about it, haven't even given it a second thought. I've even left the country. I was in Croatia for a few weeks, and so I just figure like where I'm at and the people I'm around, we're all young, healthy people. So, the people who did get it weren't experiencing like any super bad symptoms or anything like that, So even Walt had it, and he was back. He did the 2 weeks of quarantine, but while he had his symptoms, it wasn't that bad. He said it was just like the cold, and he was sleepy and slept and did all that other good stuff. But so I was just kind of felt like it would be like the chicken pox for me. I would just wait my turn to get it, get over it, and then that would be that.
Yeah, man, that's kind of how I felt about it too. Honestly, at some point, I feel like we're all going to get it, and you don't want it. You don't want to give it to someone who could be at risk, and we got to do our part. But at some point, it's almost like you're going to get it, just go through it, get it over with, and get it done, unless there's a vaccine. And then at some point, who knows with all that. But I have to ask you, we're going to talk more about Walt. We're going to talk about your fight against Antônio Arroyo this weekend in Vegas in just a minute. But Eryk Anders, your boy in the building, I got to ask you the similarities are striking to me. And there are a lot of differences too, and differences in the way that you've dealt with these two men for sure. But you play for Nick Saban at Alabama, widely regarded as maybe the greatest college football coach of all time right now. I don't see how he's not in at least the top three. And that conversation and just the success that he's had at Alabama, you win a national title there with him, and now you're fighting in the UFC under Dana White. Two unquestioned leaders, two guys who have steered the ship. Saban thought he had COVID. He was going to coach right through it. Dana White, obviously, we know his thoughts on COVID. Just march right through it, keep it going. These two guys, what are some of the similarities that you've noticed between them as you've played for Nick Saban and worked under Dana White, albeit the relationships being different, Eryk, but two very powerful figures in the world of sports, Nick Saban and Dana White?
I think it's really hard to compare those two because Dana White's not a coach. He's a businessman. He's running a business and making decisions as it pertains to business versus Coach Saban. He's dealing with athletes that, between the ages of 18 and 22 years old, who come from so many different, walks of life and things like that. And, it's his job to get them prepared to perform in a competition. Dana White just says, here is when you're going to, the fight is November 14th, ready or not, your ass better show up, So, but, they both have dominant personalities. They both are movers and shakers and get shit done. And, that's just kind of how you have to be if you want to be successful, I think.
Yeah, man, a lot of differences for sure, but a lot of similarities, and that charging forward, that mentality of getting things done. And I know Nick Saban didn't end up having COVID, but when he thought he did, he was going to coach right through it. He wanted to coach no matter what, and that wasn't going to stop him. Dana White, COVID not going to stop him. He was going to build his own campus and do everything in Vegas with the UFC right then and there, and having a hotel on site to keep people quarantined and whatever he needed to do, his own testing facility. Dana White looked into all that. So obviously a lot of similarities between those guys and just marching through things. They don't go around shit, that's for sure.
Man, I don't think that Saban had COVID. I think his might have been a false positive. Like, he tested negative the very next day and then 4 times after that. So it's hard for me to believe that a 70-year-old man got COVID, had no symptoms, and then tested positive and tested negative the day after he tested positive.
Yeah, man, right? Crazy, this world we're living in right now with COVID, with everything going on, the world moving on, though. And Eryk Anders getting back in the octagon this weekend against Antônio Arroyo. It's Gries' cage side seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house. Your boy in the building. I can never say that enough. I love that comedian who mimics Jay-Z, and he does all the rappers' voices, and he's like, your boy in the building, Eryk Anders right now. And I want to talk to you about your boy, your teammate, your family, Walt Harris. You've been on the same schedule all year, and it's been a tough year for him with everything going on in his family and getting COVID and a couple of losses up at heavyweight. But having your teammate on the same schedule throughout the year, your teammate that's only one weight class away from you too when he's up at heavyweight, it depends because you fought at light heavyweight too, but just being on that same schedule for most of the year, training at the same time, sparring at the same times, how has that helped you with Walt being there all year long with you, get ready to get back in the octagon this weekend, and you got Antônio Arroyo coming up?
Well, man, you always got to be sharp when you're in there with Walt, man. A lot of times, I'm probably never going to fight anybody with hand speed like Walt. So it's good being in front of him and moving around and, trying not to get hit as best as possible. But, sometimes that's unavoidable because, that guy trains too. He's good. And so I know that I have a chin for sure, if nothing else.
Man, we always know you have that chin, the linebacker chin, getting in there and hitting people from day one, and no one's finished you in the octagon. Eryk Anders taking on Antônio Arroyo this weekend, UFC Vegas 14, and of course training with Walt Harris. And Arroyo, known for the power in his kicks, but I can't imagine, man, he's a good grappler too, but I can't imagine he kicks any harder than Walt either.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt that he's as fast as Walt, and Walt's not malicious, dude. He understands that there are weight classes for a reason. So even when he's going slow and not throwing 100%, man, it's still a lot of weight. He's got a big lower body, so that's still a lot of weight. Powering through those kicks and whatnot. So, I felt those never with the bare shin. Thank God. He always wears shin pads, but watching the Arroyo fight, you know, they're different style of guys. You know, they're not comparable. You know, Arroyo seems to have like that karate style, kick first, kick heavy attack. Wall is definitely a hands first, hands heavy attack. So, you know, but at the same time, like moving around, wrestling and taking down and doing all that other stuff with the guy who's 260 pounds and is athletic as Walt. You know, these middleweights are going to be dwarfs compared to him.
No kidding, man, right? I mean, that's a big dude to be training with. On the other hand, these guys might be a little quicker, even though Walt's very quick and very athletic. But Arroyo's a guy, we talked about the kicks. He's a grappler. He's got some finishes on the ground as well as 4 KOs, 4 of each, I think, 4 KOs and 4 subs. And he's a threat either on the feet or on the ground, and everybody in the UFC is anyway. But where do you see your biggest advantages, Eryk Anders, in this fight against Antônio Arroyo this weekend at UFC Vegas 14? What are your biggest advantages?
I don't know, man. I think my biggest advantage is everywhere. You know, I think his strength, his weight. I think the guys who kick at me a lot, you know, they end up on their back, with the exception of what's the guy's name? Khalil Roundtree. And I don't think he's that. He might be. I don't know. We'll find out on Saturday.
Yeah, man, and that's one thing, you know, for you being a football player, the wrap, the follow-through, the tackling, so big for your takedowns and something that, you know, you've worked on extensively and you've gotten better and better in your UFC career as you get set to take on Antônio Arroyo this weekend. UFC Vegas 14, UFC Fight Night, Felder versus Dos Anjos, and your boy Eryk Anders joining me here cage side. And, you know, Eryk, that's one thing that I always look at with athletes is what helped you guys get to where you are now. And you obviously being a football player was huge in your development as a fighter. Outside of the obvious things like tackling and wrapping up and following through on takedowns and being able to hand fight those offensive linemen off of you and being in close proximity and close quarters for all those years and using your hands and your leverage and all those things, those are the obvious things. But aside from those obvious things, what has helped you the most, or which things have helped you the most as you've transitioned from football player to mixed martial artist, from the gridiron to the cage in the octagon, ultimately, which things helped you the most get here?
Man, you know, I think that, you know, football players bring a certain toughness and grit to the game. And I think that's why you see a lot more, outside of wrestling, you see a lot more football players than any other sport, defensive guys in particular, making their way into MMA just because, you know, there's a certain level of grit and tenacity that you have to play at a high level.
Grit and tenacity work well no matter where you're playing or what you're playing, what sport you're participating in, no doubt. Eryk Anders, your boy, ESPN, Vegas 14, ESPN Fight Night, Felder versus Dos Anjos against Antônio Arroyo this weekend. And, you know, you talked about your football career, man, and you made it to the highest of levels, almost to the NFL with the Cleveland Browns. But, man, the national championship game, you played one of your best games against Texas. You're at the Rose Bowl. That's every kid's dream to make it there. Well, every fighter's dream is to fight in Vegas, the fight capital of the world. You know you made it when you fight in Sin City, albeit not the way you might have envisioned it. And we talked a little bit about this before the show, Eryk, but man, unbelievable as a fighter to know not only you're fighting on ESPN, but you're fighting in Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world. You know you made it, bro, when that happens.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, this is about collecting that check and getting paid. So, you know, I don't care if we're fighting in Timbuktu. You know, I'm trying to cash those checks.
Right, Timbuktu, the moon, it doesn't matter, man. Get those zeros in the paycheck, and Eryk Anders will show up. Your boy in the building right here, UFC Fight Night Vegas taking on Antônio Arroyo on ESPN Plus this weekend. Felder versus Dos Anjos, the main event. And Eryk Anders, man, you've had a lot of support throughout your career. First time I met you was at a local MMA event in Arizona, and I was running production and doing play-by-play with Jamie Varner and Ryan Jimmo, and your brother, Michael Anders, or Durs as I call him, was judging Rush Club during the intermission. We did a competitive fitness thing that I was the play-by-play announcer for, and that's how I knew him. But I remember him telling me, and this is before LFA, man. This is when you were, I think you had only fought twice on the local circuit, and he said, watch my brother, man. He's going to be a UFC fighter one day. And sure enough, there you are. To have that kind of support, not only from your brother, from your family and all your siblings and your parents, but also your extended family, your football family, guys like Nick Saban. You've had so much support in your career. What's that been like, and how has it helped you?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest benefit is we're all competitive. So growing up, even before I played football, it was a competitive atmosphere in the house. and whatnot, you know? So, you know, I've been literally a competitor since forever. And yeah, I think it just transitions well into sports.
What would you be doing if you weren't fighting or playing a sport of some kind?
Man, I don't know. I've tried life outside of sports and it just wasn't for me. I probably would have found something else to do. Probably just, yeah. I was doing the 9 to 5 thing in the desk and, hated every second of it. So that's why I started MMA. I started with jiu-jitsu, loved that, and then wanted to take it to the next level with MMA. So if it wasn't MMA, then it would be jiu-jitsu.
What are you going to do, man, when it all comes to an end one day and you can't hit anybody for a living and you have a non-contact occupation? Then what?
Man, I think jiu-jitsu will always be there for me.
Yeah, man, no doubt, and you'll always be in shape. We know that for sure. Your boy in the building, Eryk Anders here, cage side seat on MMA Weekly. Jim Gries, call me Gries. It's UFC Vegas 14 this weekend. He's taking on Antônio Arroyo. It's only been one time for you this year in the octagon. We talked about that earlier. 7 times in the previous 2 years you stepped in there to do battle, and I know you like to fight very often and keep those checks coming in, keep the competition going, and keep that passion of yours fed and that fuel burning. But what would it look like for you ideally after this fight? You know, good Lord willing, you get out of there with your hand raised, no injuries, you're cleared almost right away. When do you want to get in there and fight again? Early 2021, or what would it look like for you?
Yeah, man, 2021 sounds good to me. I had planned on going to train, in South Florida and in Canada before this fight came up. So that's something that I'd definitely like to do to add to my skill set and whatnot. But, some short notice or mouthwatering pops up, then yeah, of course, I'm in there.
That's all you need to know about Eryk Anders, your boy right there, mouthwatering. A fight opportunity, calling it mouthwatering to get inside the octagon and do battle at the highest of levels as he will do against Antônio Arroyo this weekend in Vegas. Jim Gries, cage side seat, MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house. And Eryk, for sure, perseverance, man. Growing up in a house full of siblings, playing football at the highest of levels at the University of Alabama, national champion in the UFC, overcoming adversity, coming back from losses and performing at your best again, just constantly evolving and getting better, the wins, the losses, overcoming, adapting, getting stronger. That's the constant life of an athlete. But what about the regular people out there, man? Someone out there who's watching right now, maybe this year's been really tough on them. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they ran out of money. Maybe they don't feel like there's a way for them to continue to pursue their dreams the way that you are. What would you say to them so that they can stay on track and continue to chase the life of their dreams and their passion just like you are?
Man, you just gotta keep pushing, man, one step at a time. Sometimes you have a setback, sometimes you stumble, fall, but man, you get up, dust yourself off, and keep it moving, man. I don't think there's any successful person that hasn't failed or gone through some kind of adversity to get where they're at, and it's not really failing unless you quit. So if you make a mistake or whatever the situation is, man, it could always be better, but positive mindset and, can I cuss on this show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a real fuck you mentality. So I don't care what anybody says or, how anybody thinks about me. I'm going to keep it moving and, it is what it is.
Well, I know this, man. That mentality has served you well from the high school football days all the way through the University of Alabama, being a national champion there, a legacy champion, LFA at middleweight, and now 5-5 in the UFC, looking to make it 6-5 this weekend against Antônio Arroyo. Eryk Anders, your boy in the building. So nice catching up with you again, bro. Go get that W. We'll do this again soon. Really appreciate you. Thanks to Brandon for setting it up. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Man, thank you for having me.
Well, there you have it, fight fans. A brown belt in jiu-jitsu, great takedowns and takedown defense, solid on the feet, heavy striker, accurate, has been in some wars. Who could forget the Thiago Santos fight? Eryk Anders never been finished in the octagon. Antônio Arroyo's got 8 finishes, 4 knockouts and 4 submissions. Something's going to give this weekend at middleweight, UFC Vegas 14 on ESPN+. Felder versus Dos Anjos. Eryk Anders, your boy, right here, cage side seat on MMA Weekly, the best MMA talk with the biggest names in the sport from the best seat in the house. Until next week, folks, I'm Jim Gries reminding you to keep your game tight and your mind right.